This is an NBC News special report. Here's Jaden Dawson.
Good morning. Today we'll be discussing the civil rights here in America. Civil rights are the rights that every person should have regardless of their gender, race, or religion. The civil rights movement is a timeline of events about how the civil rights issues were trying to be solved or eliminated. Some of these situations include mass incarceration, public health, wealth inequality, and voting rights. Now I'm half African American and Japanese. My question is, why are some people of color being treated differently than other families? I mean, what's the difference? Why do they get treated unfairly in the first place? Is it their skin color? I mean, we're all humans. Today, I'll be focusing on the voting rights of African Americans. First of all, I think that the right to vote should be endless. I don't know why voting rights are limited, or at least used to be. Nowadays, Black Americans have to have their IDs checked very carefully before voting, whereas other people just go on and vote. This is too much work for some of these people, and it may discourage them to vote in the first place. And is that fair to you? My opinion to this is that we should treat everyone equally so that the world can be a better place. I mean, why is this voting rights subject still even a problem? This is 2016, not the 1960s. Now let's review a little history. This voting rights problem first started in the year of 1776. This was when the Declaration of Independence was signed. The right to vote was beginning in the United States, and it was exclusively a right available to whites. Very few to no blacks were able to vote. In 1869, Congress passed the 15th Amendment giving African American men the right to vote. A few years later, in 1896, Louisiana passes grandfather clauses to keep blacks enslaved from voting. Registered black voters dropped from 44.8%. In 1940, only 3% of eligible African Americans in the South were registered to vote. The Jim Crow laws, such as literacy tests and poll taxes, were laws that were meant to keep African Americans from voting. In 1965, more than 500 nonviolent marchers for civil rights were attacked by law enforcement officers while attempting to march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, to demand the need for African American voting. Why did they have to kill them? The law enforcement officers did not want them to succeed. 2 days after Martin Luther King Jr. led the symbolic march over the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the events of Selma increased public support for the cause. Later that year, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act into the law, permanently barring barriers to political participation by racial and ethnic minorities, prohibiting any election practice that denies the right to vote on the account of race. 2011, restrictions to voting passed in South Carolina, Texas, and Florida are found to disproportionately impact minority voters. Also, a record number of restrictions to voting were introduced in the state legislatures nationwide, including photo ID requirements. So basically, black citizens always need their IDs to be checked before voting. Later in 2003, at the Supreme Court was Shelby County and Holder. Shelby County was saying that the Congress did not have the required constitutional authority to reauthorize Section 5 of the Voting Rights Law. However, Holder was saying the total opposite. Holder was saying that they had complete authority and the rights to create these laws. Now 2016 is our election year, and people will be voting for our next president in November. However, even today, we still have these problems of voting. But it's not as intense as it was before. All African Americans have the right to vote today, but it's just more difficult because of all the processes the government makes them go through, such as getting their IDs checked very carefully. And we still need to fix that. I think a good solution to this problem would be to talk to our government and speak up about the unfair laws. I'm going to turn 13 in just a couple months, and that means in about 5 years I'll be the right age to vote. By the time I'm able to vote, I hope that all these problems will be gone, so then the future will be a better place and it will make life less stressing. This concludes our special report. I'm Jaden Dawson, NBC News, Los Angeles.